So it's been a while since I did something that could be considered a channel update. I had something really cool that arrived earlier on. I don't know if you can see that, but this is a basically brand new old stock Super Joy card. It's a Hudson controller for the Super Famicom. Has auto fire on all of the face buttons. But these go for a pretty penny if you see them usually in brand new condition. And I managed to get it for a fraction of the price. But anyway, I'm already getting distracted. Today I want to split the video into two parts. The first part is the very quick bullet points, shall we say, of updating you on the channel stuff. And then for those of you who might have a bit more time or want to hear a bit more about the reasons behind some of the changes and new developments, you can stay tuned in for the more longer form of the video. But let's get straight on in with it. So first of all, a lot of you may have noticed that I renamed the channel. I'm no longer on YouTube as Pixel Vixen or Pixel Vixen in Japan. Gradually I've been renaming the channel and the artwork to Vix in Japan. Simple reason for it is that I was never really that happy with the so-called Pixel Vixen name. It was something I came up with on the spur of the moment nearly 6 years ago now when I started this channel, and to be honest with you, I was never really that happy with it. It had some connotations that I wasn't overly happy with. The only reason I went with it is because it kind of rhymed, but anyway. That's all changed now. But the actual emphasis of the channel is not going to change too much, but I'll talk about that in just a moment. So on this channel going forwards, you'll still be seeing sort of stuff to do with Japan, Japanese language, stuff to do with retro gaming as a wider topic, as it probably relates to my experience of it here in Japan. And hopefully in time I'll be able to go to a few events now that the worst, hopefully, of the corona pandemic has eased off, and therefore travelling about Japan is a lot easier now. A lot of events have been held and so forth. And also bring you stuff to do with pixel art and stuff like that on the channel. So pretty much as always, except for one key thing that will be moving off onto its own separate channel. So it's basically business as usual here, to be honest with you, just more of the same. But the one thing that will be changing is that I'm no longer going to be posting stuff to do either with my manga itself, Future Saviors, or to do with my traditional materials artwork, so colour pencil, Copic marker, sketching, ink, all that kind of stuff. The reason for that is that I've always done this kind of stuff, you know, pretty much right from the very beginning of this channel, but on the whole, that kind of content does very poorly on this channel. And I think there's a very simple reason for it. Like, if I think about it, like, I subscribe to a bunch of channels just like everybody. And, you know, if I tune into SNES Drunk, one of my favourite channels, predominantly reviewing Super Nintendo games or Super Famicom, occasionally branches out into other video games. But if SNES Drunk was to start putting out videos occasionally about, I don't know, growing flowers or something like that, I'm probably going to be a bit like, okay, that's rad, but maybe if I was interested in growing flowers, I would be subscribed to somebody who like majors in that topic kind of thing. I'm not really expecting SNES Drunk to start doing that kind of stuff. And I think that's the basic reason why my manga stuff just doesn't really fly on this channel, is because people come to my channel and subscribe to me because they're expecting other types of content, and you know, that the manga stuff seems like probably to a lot of my subscribers or prospective subscribers a little bit outside of my supposed wheelhouse, as it were. So it's much better for me to put that stuff onto its own channel, where people come to my channel or that channel and expecting manga and traditional artwork related stuff, and that audience will decide whether it's worth the subscription or their views and all this kind of stuff. So all the stuff to do with Future Saviors, the manga that I've been working on for, well, over 3 years now, and any of my traditional artwork stuff is all going to go onto Future Saviors. Links in one of the corners or in the video description. go and subscribe to that. There should be a video there already which you can watch, which introduces the channel. So all the stuff talking about my manga will be going over there, and hopefully that will drive a bit more interest in the manga. But if you want to hear a bit more about that, stay tuned in for the larger portion of this video, which is the whys and wherefores for these changes and updates. And finally, on the quick part of this update, I'm going to be starting yet another channel, as if I'm not time poor enough already, which is going to be called Saki Endo's Rubbish Heap. That is my original character. Here's Saki here. So she's sketching away and talking to her mum. Some of you may be familiar with her, but that's one of my original characters from Future Saviours, and she'll be co-hosting it with my other two main characters, Hisao Sato and Kaito Seki, also from the manga. And the reason for that is because it doesn't really have that much connection to the manga and its story itself, but it's because I have 3 ready-made characters that I know inside out, that I can draw like as easy as that. I know their personalities, and I think it'll be much more interesting, much more funny, and much more rad if like those 3 characters are hosting it, because they're a bunch of mates. And basically the channel, before I blather on too much, is going to be predominantly reviewing retro games, but also some modern stuff for the Switch. But the focus of the channel is going to be on Japanese games. So both from the point of view of like, if you wanted to import this game, could you actually enjoy it with like no Japanese knowledge, or do you need to know a little bit of Japanese, or do you need to be conversationally fluent, or do you really need to have a very good grasp on Japanese to get the most from playing this game in Japanese, but also to highlight things that are like slight oddities or obscurities more than anything in various console or maybe some other system catalogues. Like, there are a whole bunch of games that, you know, people just don't talk about, that are like in their own way really good, or they might be a bit crap, but have got something a little bit interesting about them that deserves a little bit more exposure. And so that channel's going to be dedicated to you know, showing those obscurities, as well as games that might be a little bit better known, but, you know, like, do you need to know Japanese? And if you do, to what degree do you need to know Japanese if you was to import this game? So, and yeah, it's going to predominantly cover Famicom, PC Engine, Super Famicom, maybe some Mega Drive, Genesis as it was known in North America, Game Boy certainly, Game Boy Advance, and then maybe some PlayStation and PS2 stuff, maybe a bit of Saturn, maybe occasionally, and then jumping over to things like the Switch. So that's going to be the emphasis of the channel. Short, snappy reviews, 4 to 5 minutes in length. Is it a good game? What degree of Japanese knowledge do you need to have, if any? And yeah, it should be a whole heap of fun. That's going to be Saki Endo's Rubbish Heap. Links in the corners and in the video description. There won't be any videos for a while on that channel, because I'm building up the artwork for the avatars and all the rest of it for Saki and Hisao and Kaito. You may have seen some of that on this channel over the Christmas New Year period, where I did a whole bunch of pixel art, because it's going to be predominantly pixel art based avatars and all that kind of stuff. So should be really cool. Hoping to have the first video out probably by the end of June of this year, 2024. And aiming to put out a video roughly every 2 weeks. If we can get it up to every week, that would be awesome. So stay tuned for that. I think it's going to be a whole bunch of fun, you know, highlighting stuff that people just don't talk about. So yeah, I'm not really expecting to review games like Super Mario Brothers over there, because I think there's probably enough reviews of that game on YouTube already. But if you're looking for reviews on stuff that's a little bit more odd, then yeah, it's going to be quite an interesting channel. So that's the major part of the update. It's all really fun and exciting stuff. Yeah, I'm going to end this part of the update there for those of you who need to get on with other things and all the rest of it. But for those of you who want to hear the full SP, keep watching, because I'm going to go into that now. And yeah, but otherwise, for those of you tuning out now, I hope you're all keeping really well. Thank you very much for your continued viewership, and if you want to continue supporting what I do with a little bit more, you know, there's lots of ways you can support me in your video description, including things like Patreon and all that kind of jazz. But otherwise, hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you in another one of these. Take care. Stay tuned in, folks. I'm going to go into the full SP now. But before that, I'm going to take a slurp of coffee. So I say that this is going to be the longer part of the video, but I'm still hoping to keep it relatively compact and to the point. So, what's the driving force behind these changes? Well, the simple one is that I've been in Japan now for about 4 years, and soon I'll be presumably going into my 5th year working as an assistant language teacher, an ALT, and I can say that whilst I am still pretty much enjoying the work, I am rapidly approaching the end of the line of this doing this kind of work, if I'm honest. The reasons are manifold, but I can't earn what I would consider to be a reasonable wage from doing this kind of work, and also I'm having to work a lot harder doing this job than really I'm being paid to do. And so to put that in context, when I lived up in Iwate, I would say that pretty much all the time I was the assistant. I was number 2 in the classroom. I helped out. I lived up to the job title, and to a large degree that meant that the wages that I earned were like, well, they're not great, but on the other hand, I don't have a lot of responsibility and I don't have to work like really, really hard. So, you know, the wage was fair, particularly when I first came to Japan, because back then I used to work for Interac, and, you know, there would be days interspersed throughout the calendar year, you know, the school year, where you didn't have to go into work. They were so-called work days, and there was no expectation for you to be I mean, they said that you should be planning lessons and you should all this kind of stuff, but I didn't need to, quite frankly, because I wasn't number 1 teacher. Very occasionally I might have to prepare an activity, but, you know, generally those were additional days where I didn't have to work. So not only did I get like a long summer where I didn't have to work but was still paid, I also got like 2 to 3 weeks for winter vacation. The only time where that sort of petered out was in the so-called spring vacation from like mid-March through to about the first week of April, where we didn't get paid, you know, for those 3 weeks, because essentially our contracts ended in roughly the middle of March and reconvened around about the 6th, 7th of April when the Japanese school year starts. But since I moved to Mie, I have been in a position where, through no choice of my own, I have been forced essentially into being the number 1 teacher in the classroom, meaning that for about 80% of my classes, I am the number 1 teacher, meaning I have to plan all of the lessons, give the lesson, and do everything to make sure that all of those lessons go smoothly. And on average, I teach probably about 25 classes a week. So I work a lot harder here than I ever used to in Iwate, and I actually earn less. And part of the reason for that is I get a slightly longer summer vacation. I still get my 3 weeks for Christmas, New Year's, and I don't have to work March and April at all. But the fact remains that when I am going to work, I'm working 5 days a week, and it's tiring. I work at elementary school, young kids, you have to be energetic, you know, like I might have my reservations about the level to which I'm having to work, but, you know, I'm still very much of the mind that, yeah, I want to do a good job, you know, like these kids deserve like a good fun English class, and you know, that's just the way that I look at this. But my company has made it very clear to me that I am working an entry-level position, even though I think most people would agree that if you're the number 1 teacher in the classroom, do we consider teachers to be entry-level jobs? I would argue that a teacher probably has to use a bit more brain power than perhaps if I was working on the checkouts at a supermarket, which I'm not knocking. I've done it in the past. I've worked on the checkouts, I've done shelf stacking, I've done washing up, I've done a lot of, you know, very sort of blue collar jobs and that, you know, so I'm not knocking those jobs, but teaching does require a certain amount of skill that perhaps buzzing things past a barcode scanner doesn't necessarily require, shall we say. And my company has said to me, well, if you don't like the wages, you can leave. Which was, my mind sort of slightly thought, well, charming. But on the other hand, I thought that this is, in a way, the universe giving me all the signs that, like, you've really got to knuckle down on, like, what you're doing. You know, like, you can't say on the one hand, like, oh, I really want to, you know, make a good go of my manga, or I really want to make a good go of my, you know, Japanese study and speaking ability, you know, on one hand, and then on the other hand be just like, yeah, but doing the ALT work provides me a steady wage, and yeah, I'll just keep on doing this, and then life kind of drifts by. So in a way, I kind of feel like, well, this is, you know, like the universe saying to me, like, well, you know, if you're sincere about these things, then, well, this is a big sign for you to, like, you know, like, don't keep on relying on taking the easy option, doing the ALT stuff. So fair enough. You know, I could complain about other things, but, you know, like, I actually do enjoy my life here in Japan, and yeah, my wages are pretty crappy, but the cost of living here in Japan is lower. I don't have a lot of money left over at the end, but tangentially, this does wrap back around to this game controller. Like, I have seen these brand new, essentially brand new in box, go for about 20,000 yen on Yahoo auctions, which is insane. I mean, that's like probably about £120, I think, maybe over £100 for sure, maybe £100, I'm not sure. The Japanese yen is not that strong at the moment, but regardless, yeah, they're really expensive. I scored this for less than 3,000. I paid about 2,500 yen for this because I had a bit of Nakari credit from other stuff I've sold in there. So yeah, and it's brand new. I'm going to unwrap it for another video. So not earning a lot of money does mean that I have the thrill of the chase of, like, finding bargains here in Japan, and, you know, I can live a fairly decent life here. So I'm not complaining from the point of view like, oh, I can't do anything in Japan, because actually I have a pretty good life here in Japan. I mean, a lot of people would probably look at the way that I live, which has to be very frugal. Like, I haven't got the heating on right now, and it is quite cold in here, but I will put it on this evening. But, you know, when I go shopping for food, I try to keep my weekly food shop down to about 3,000 yen a week. That doesn't include what I call lotions and potions, things like, you know, skin moisturizer and shampoo and, you know, washing powder or liquid for the washing machine and that kind of stuff. That I tend to have a separate budget for on a monthly basis, because I don't have to buy that stuff every week kind of thing. But again, I try to cap it. So I live frugally in Japan, but continue with this, you know, entry level, as my employer calls it, ALT work, or Eikai work, which is like English conversation school work, is a dead end. And I know that. And personally, as much as I enjoy, you know, working with the young kids and all the rest of it, I don't want to pursue teaching English in, like, having to take further study to get qualifications, which would mean I could potentially work for a private school or an international school. That's not what I want to pursue. That's not to say that I wouldn't teach English, but it would be on my own terms, like basically freelance or self-employed. So I have to do something to basically give myself more time to do the things I love. And I'm probably poorly explaining this, but if I'm working 5 days a week, busting a gut for not a lot in return, and then I get home from work and I have to make dinner, and, you know, I go for a run, and then I have to squeeze in drawing my manga around that, I am tired in the evening. And if I'm only managing to ink 1 page a week and releasing 1 page a week, which is what I've started doing, I should have mentioned that in the other part of the video, but anyway, whatever. I'm releasing 1 page a week on Twitter or X or whatever it is, and Instagram and Pixiv at the moment. So, but I've been doing that on Patreon for at least the last year or so. But patrons are way ahead of what I'm releasing for free to the public. So, but essentially, if I'm only inking and releasing 1 page a week, I'll be dead before I finish the story of Future Savers. And that's not hyperbole, that's not me rolling out the sympathy vote or anything like that. It's just that I know how long this story roughly is going to be at its minimum, And, you know, at best I'll be releasing 52 pages a year. In 10 years I release 520 pages. At minimum, I think that this manga is going to be about probably somewhere between 1,600 to 2,000 pages long. That's 30 to 40 years worth of work there. You know, there's a good chance that I'll have snuffed it by then. So, so I have to basically find a way of giving myself more time. And the way that I can do that is to, number one, continue with my Japanese study. I passed my JLPT N3 recently, which is like the intermediate Japanese level. That's roughly B1, B2 level on the Common European Framework for Languages, I think it's called. So I would say that I'm conversationally fluent now. I still have a lot to learn, but I do pretty well, and my reading ability, whilst you know, I'm not going to be able to tackle reading sort of serious Japanese literature, but I'm getting pretty good. So I'm pursuing that with a vengeance. One, because personally for me it's essential for me to have a good life in Japan, to be relatively conversationally fluent with Japanese and all that kind of stuff, but also it enriches my life. But also in terms of being able to better my job prospects, whether that's on a self-employed basis or working with somebody else, if I'm to stay in Japan, I need good Japanese ability. So I have to pursue that. If I'm going to teach Japanese to other people, then my Japanese ability obviously has to be good. You know, you can't do that when, you know, your Japanese ability is only like, oh, I can ask for directions, you know, ano eki wa doko ni arimasu ka? You know, that's not. No, you've got to be in a position where students can ask you questions about, like, oh, I want to be able to say this in Japanese. How do I say it? And if I don't know, then I'm not particularly good at teaching Japanese, am I, quite frankly? So doesn't mean that I have to be like completely native level and all the rest of it, but my Japanese would need to be the next notch up, I think, to be able to be put into that position, kind of thing. So continue with the Japanese study. And the other reason for that is that, yeah, maybe for work it would be important, but one of the things that is potentially coming up is like, well, do I have to go back into education, like, you know, some form of like you know, like job related, you know, sort of what's the word pops into my head and then it drops out, but you know, like you know, like if I was to, like, okay, I can't make the manga stuff work on my own back, but maybe I need to go and study that at a technical college kind of level, and then that may lead into some work in the manga industry, and then in time that might, you know, mean that my own manga story gets some kind of traction, kind of thing. So, but again, if I'm to do that in Japan, my Japanese ability needs to be higher than what it is at the moment. I'm getting there, but I'm not there quite yet. So maybe within a year or two, that's an option that I will have open up to me. But if those options don't open up to me, then the other way to do it is obviously is to try and make a bit more income through YouTube and Patreon. Now, I have never done YouTube with a view of like, oh, I'm going to do this because I can earn money out of it. I've only ever done YouTube because I have a bunch of stuff that I think, hey, that's cool, I'd like to talk about this. I just have cool shit that I like to talk about every now and then, and that's why I do YouTube. I've never done it for money, but going forward, maybe if I'm going to put a bit more effort into doing YouTube, that might make me a little bit more money. I mean, roughly I make maybe at best about $50 a year out of YouTube, which, you know, is a nice bonus. But if I'm going to be, you know, relying on making my own income and then working part-time in maybe something like Eikaiwa or ALT work in the future whilst I bridge the gap, then YouTube needs to be basically earning me a bit more money for the relative effort that I put into it. And one of the ways that I can do that is to put content where it may build an audience that feels that, hey, this content deserves my attention. So that's why I'm splitting out the manga stuff, the Future Save stuff, onto its own channel, because that can do its own thing, and maybe it'll fly, maybe it'll sink, I don't know, but it's worth me putting the effort in there where people might go like, hey, yeah, I'm into this, I'll subscribe, I'll go on Patreon, I'll watch this stuff, and that may actually, as a cumulative thing, earn a better level of income for me on YouTube. Likewise, doing a slightly more focused and potentially more popular topic in Saki Endo's Rubbish Heap, with the retro game reviews and all that kind of stuff. Again, I don't think it's going to be like a majorly popular channel if it does gain any traction, but it could mean that on a monthly basis I might go from earning $50 a year out of YouTube to $50 a month, and then through that I may also get a bit more Patreon. You know, I might eventually make another $100 or so a month from Patreon if people feel that my content and what I do is deserving of that, and therefore overall, if things remain relatively stable as my current Patreon income and additional and YouTube income, you know, I might be making $400 a month out of essentially what I do for YouTube, inverted commas. And you know, and that definitely does put me in a position of being able to say like, hey, I can now work maybe 4 days a week instead of 5, and whilst I will be earning similar money to what I do now, at least I can actually live off that, and it's given me that extra day a week to then double down on the manga a bit more on the Japanese and so forth. And so cumulatively this stuff builds up and gains traction, and so therefore it might mean that I can go like, hey, look, I've really pushed the manga on, it's getting more interest because I'm able to put it out more frequently, and so it kind of snowballs, as it were. On top of that, you know, I think by splitting out the manga into Future Saviors, its own channel, will potentially drive more people towards the manga because they're expecting it. And likewise with the Saki Endo Rubbish Heap stuff, people might go like, oh, I really like the artwork style on this, and that might lead to poster sales, sticker sales, hoodie sales, t-shirt sales, this kind of stuff, because basically when I design some of the pages for the manga, I actually sort of like kill two birds with one stone, because they're designs that I apply to stickers and to posters and to hoodies and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, I might actually make more merch sales, and cumulatively I may find myself in a position in a year or two where I'm like, my stuff as a whole, YouTube, Patreon, merch, all this kind of stuff, makes me $600 a month. Then I'm in a position where I can work 3 days a week kind of thing, and so on and so forth. So of course the one thing that could blow all of this out of the water is, well, obviously the natural stuff that other things in life take over, like I have to return to the UK for one reason or another, or you know, this year I am going to be submitting Future Saviors, my manga, to competition and to publishers like crazy, exhibiting at doujinshi fairs. You know, if a publisher picks it up, that could change everything for me, and you know, it would be lovely if that happened, but I'm not banking on it. So I'm just like, essentially I just have to work harder. I have to just be a bit more clever about the way that I work. I have to be more time efficient. I have to just keep on fighting, essentially. Because I do love doing this stuff. You know, this is not like, oh, woe is me. It's not that at all. It's me recognising the situation I'm in and thinking like, well, how do I work smarter? And allowing me to work harder on this stuff. How can I make things happen for myself, essentially? And I think that these are ways in which I can do it. And, you know, hopefully it begins to bear fruit within a year or so, this hard work. So yeah, that's where we're at. I think that pretty much describes the situation that I find myself in. Yeah, so I'm going to leave it there. If that raises any questions, throw them down in the video comments. I'll endeavour to get back to you. But I'm going to leave it there because I think if I don't stop now, I'll just end up rambling. I hope you're enjoying what I do. I know that I'm enjoying what I do. And yeah, I'll see you in another video. The sun's coming out now. That's nice. I've got to box up an Amiga to send back to somebody who very kindly loaned it to me. So I'm going to crack on with that, and I'll see you in another video. I hope you're all keeping really well. Look after yourselves, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, I did it. Finally got a video update out. Sorry, folks.